The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with excitement as representatives from dozens of species gathered around the central display. Commander Zexitar of the Vorthan Empire tapped his clawed fingers against the polished metal table, his reptilian eyes gleaming with anticipation. Today marked the final phase of humanity's integration into the galactic community, and more importantly, the formal assessment of their military capabilities. "Primitive," muttered Ambassador Krillna from the Crystalline Consortium, her translucent form shimmering with disdain. "I've reviewed their technological assessments. They still use projectile weapons that fire metal slugs. Metal slugs, in an age of plasma rifles and quantum disruptors." The other delegates shared knowing looks and subtle laughs. Humanity had been the subject of much debate since their discovery 3 years ago. Their rapid technological advancement was impressive, but their military hardware remained laughably outdated by galactic standards. Most species had abandoned kinetic weapons millennia ago in favor of energy-based systems that could punch through molecular shields and quantum armor. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at attention in the center of the chamber, representing the United Earth military. Her dress uniform bore the simple insignia of her rank, and at her side hung an antique weapon that drew curious stares from the assembled aliens. The sidearm looked primitive even by human standards, a revolver with a long barrel and wooden grip, its metal surface worn smooth from decades of use. "Captain Vasquez," Commander Zextar began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 3 star systems. "We understand you wish to demonstrate your species' military capabilities. However, given the antiquated nature of your equipment, perhaps we should simply proceed with the integration paperwork." Elena's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "With respect, Commander, the demonstration was specifically requested by this council to evaluate human military effectiveness." "I'm prepared to proceed." Ambassador Krillna's form flickered with amusement. "Young human, my people have weapons that can disintegrate matter at the molecular level. The Vorthan Empire possesses cannons that can crack moons. The Nexari Coalition has perfected weapons that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What could your primitive projectile weapon possibly demonstrate that would impress this assembly?" The chamber erupted in polite but condescending chatter. Several delegates began pulling up holographic displays of their own advanced weaponry. Sleek energy rifles that hummed with contained power, crystalline formations that could channel stellar energy, and biomechanical constructs that seemed to pulse with their own malevolent life. Elena waited patiently for the noise to subside. Her hand rested casually near her weapon, though she made no move to draw it. "I understand your skepticism," she said once the chamber quieted. "Our weapons may appear primitive by your standards. This particular sidearm was manufactured over a century ago according to designs that are even older. By your assessment, it should be completely obsolete." "Exactly," exclaimed General Thakmor of the Nexari Coalition, his insectoid features clicking with what his species considered laughter. "We've moved beyond such crude implements. Our weapons harness the fundamental forces of the universe. They can strike targets across solar systems, phase through any known defensive material, and adjust their destructive output in real time." Elena nodded respectfully. "Impressive achievements. However, I believe there's value in understanding why humans continue to develop and refine kinetic weapons alongside our more advanced technologies. Sometimes the oldest solutions prove to be the most effective." The delegates exchanged glances that clearly communicated their shared opinion. Humans were too attached to their primitive past to be taken seriously as a military force. Their integration into the galactic community would need to include extensive technological upgrades and tactical retraining. "Commander," Zextar gestured to a side chamber where a series of targets had been arranged. "Very well, Captain. We've prepared a standard assessment range. Please demonstrate your weapon's capabilities against our basic target array." As they moved toward the testing area, Elena caught fragments of whispered conversations among the delegates. The Vorthan Empire was already discussing trade agreements that would position them as humanity's primary military supplier. The Crystalline Consortium was calculating the profits from a complete overhaul of human defense systems. The Nexari Coalition was considering offering humanity protectorate status. Given their obvious military inadequacy, the testing chamber contained targets made from various materials common throughout the galaxy: crystallized energy matrices, quantum-stable alloys, biomechanical composites, and several types of molecular shields. Each target represented technology that had made traditional, kinetic weapons obsolete for most species centuries ago. These targets represent standard defensive materials used throughout the galaxy, explained Dr. Veloth, the Council's chief military analyst. His tall, ethereal form gestured toward each target in turn. The energy matrices can absorb and disperse most projectile impacts. The quantum alloys exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. The biomechanical targets can adapt and harden in response to incoming threats. Elena examined each target carefully, noting their composition and estimated defensive capabilities. The other delegates watched, with barely concealed amusement as she spent several minutes studying what they considered obsolete challenges. Perhaps we should provide the human with one of our training weapons, suggested Ambassador Krillna with false generosity. Something more appropriate for engaging these targets? Elena finally stepped back and drew her revolver. The weapon's simple mechanism seemed almost comically outdated in the high-tech testing chamber. Several delegates activated their personal recording devices, clearly intending to capture humanity's military inadequacy for later study and amusement. "Thank you for the offer," Elena replied, checking her weapon with practiced efficiency. "But I believe this will suffice." The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of monitoring equipment. Elena raised her weapon, took careful aim at the first target, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The delegates leaned forward expectantly, waiting to witness the futility of primitive human technology. Against advanced galactic defenses, what happened next would forever change their understanding of human warfare and the dangerous assumptions that could be made about any species' military capabilities. The sound that echoed through the testing chamber was unlike anything the assembled delegates had ever heard from a kinetic weapon. Instead of the sharp crack they expected, Elena's revolver produced a deep, resonating boom that seemed to shake the very foundations of the space station. The crystallized energy matrix target, designed to absorb and disperse projectile impacts, simply vanished in a shower of sparkling fragments. Commander Zextar's crest flattened against his skull in surprise. What type of projectile was that?" Elena calmly rotated the cylinder of her revolver, preparing for the next shot. Standard issue for human deep space operations. Depleted uranium core with a tungsten jacket, fired at approximately 3,000 meters per second. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Veloth, his scanners working frantically to analyze what remained of the target. "Our energy matrices are designed to withstand impacts from hypervelocity railguns. The energy absorption rate should have..." His words were cut off as Elena fired again. The quantum-stable alloy target, which existed across multiple dimensional phases to avoid conventional weapons, shattered like glass, fragments scattered across the chamber floor, their dimensional stability completely disrupted by the impact. Ambassador Krillna's crystalline form flickered rapidly between colors, a sign of extreme agitation. "That's impossible. Quantum alloys cannot be affected by purely physical force. The projectile should have passed through harmlessly." Elena checked her weapon again, her movements calm and professional despite the growing tension in the chamber. Human military scientists discovered that quantum-stable materials have a resonance frequency that can be disrupted by impacts within a specific velocity range. Our ammunition is specifically designed to exploit that weakness. The third target was a biomechanical composite that could adapt and harden in response to incoming threats. As Elena took aim, the target's surface began to shift and strengthen, preparing to absorb whatever primitive projectile was heading its way. The delegates watched with renewed interest, confident that this adaptive target would finally demonstrate the limitations of human weaponry. Elena squeezed the trigger. The biomechanical target exploded in a spray of organic matter and metal fragments. The adaptive systems hadn't even had time to fully respond before the projectile tore through them. The kinetic energy transfer was too rapid for biological systems to compensate, Elena explained to the stunned assembly. Even advanced biomechanical constructs have response time limitations. Human ammunition is designed to exceed those limits. General Thakmore's clicking had stopped completely. His compound eyes tracked Elena's movements as she prepared for the fourth target, a molecular shield generator. "Human, your projectiles are moving faster than our sensors initially detected. What propellant are you using?" Elena smiled slightly, the first emotion she had shown during the demonstration. That's classified. But I can tell you that human chemists have had several centuries to perfect explosive compounds. We're quite good at making things go very fast. The molecular shield flickered to life around the fourth target, creating a barrier that should have been impenetrable to any physical object. The shield technology worked by manipulating matter at the subatomic level, creating zones where solid objects couldn't exist. Most galactic militaries considered molecular shields the ultimate defense against kinetic weapons. Elena fired. The projectile passed through the molecular shield as if it wasn't there, pulverizing the target behind it. The shield generator sparked and died, completely overloaded by something that should have been impossible. Dr. Veloth's scans were showing readings that defied his understanding of physics. The projectile, it maintained molecular cohesion while passing through a molecular disruption field. How? Human metallurgy, Elena replied simply. We've been working with metal for a very long time. We know how to make projectiles that hold together under extreme conditions. The fifth target was surrounded by a gravitational distortion field that should have deflected any incoming projectile. The technology bent space-time itself, creating a protective bubble that most species considered the pinnacle of defensive systems. Only the most advanced energy weapons could penetrate such defenses. Elena's shot punched through the gravitational field without deviation, destroying the target and the field generator simultaneously. The delegates watched in growing alarm as their most advanced defensive technologies proved useless against what they had dismissed as primitive human weaponry. The projectile maintained its trajectory through a gravitational distortion, whispered Ambassador Krillna. That should be physically impossible. Elena began reloading her revolver with practiced movements. Human physicists have studied gravitational effects extensively. We know how to calculate trajectories that compensate for field distortions. It's just a matter of mathematics and proper ammunition design. The final target was protected by what the galactic community considered the ultimate defense, a phase variance shield that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The target flickered in and out of normal space-time, making it impossible for conventional weapons to establish a target lock, let alone score a hit. This should be interesting, murmured Commander Zextar, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Phase variance technology makes targets untouchable by weapons operating in normal space. Elena studied the phasing target for several moments, timing its dimensional shifts. The other delegates began to relax slightly, assuming that even human ingenuity had limits. Surely no kinetic weapon could hit a target that existed across multiple dimensional phases. Elena raised her revolver and fired what appeared to be a normal shot. The projectile struck the target during one of its brief appearances in normal space, but instead of simply destroying it, something extraordinary happened. The target exploded across multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating a cascade of energy discharges that forced the chamber's safety systems to activate. When the emergency barriers finally lowered, the delegates stared at the empty space where the final target had been. Dr. Veloth's instruments registered energy signatures from at least 7 different dimensional phases, all caused by a single projectile impact. What? Commander Zextar asked slowly. Was in that last round. Elena holstered her weapon and smiled. Experimental ammunition, multi-phase uranium cores with quantum entanglement triggers. When the projectile impacts a phase-shifting target, it creates a resonance cascade across all dimensional phases the target is occupying. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the station's air recycling systems. Every delegate stared at Elena with expressions ranging from shock to dawning respect to outright fear. General Thakmor was the first to speak. How long have humans possessed such weapons? Elena checked her chronometer casually, as if she hadn't just demolished every advanced defense technology known to the galactic community. The multi-phase ammunition has been in development for about 15 years. The standard depleted uranium rounds have been used by human military forces for over 2 centuries. The silence that followed was profound. Commander Zextar's claws scraped against the metal table as his hands trembled slightly. 2 centuries. Humans had possessed weapons capable of defeating galactic defenses for 2 centuries. While most species had assumed they were technologically primitive, Ambassador Krillna's form had shifted to a deep amber color, indicating extreme concern among her people. Captain Vasquez, perhaps you could explain why humans continue to develop what appear to be primitive kinetic weapons when other species have moved to energy-based systems. Elena straightened her uniform and walked closer to the assembled delegates. It's really quite simple. Energy weapons are certainly impressive, and they have their place in human military doctrine. But they have significant limitations that kinetic weapons don't share. Dr. Veloth's instruments were still analyzing the residual energy signatures from the destroyed targets. What limitations? Our energy weapons can be tuned for any defensive system, adjusted for power output, and they never run out of ammunition as long as power is available. Elena nodded approvingly. Excellent points. Energy weapons are very versatile. However, they share one critical weakness that kinetic weapons don't have. General Thakmore leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lighting. And that weakness is? They can be stopped, Elena said simply. Energy attacks, no matter how sophisticated, are still forms of electromagnetic radiation or quantum field manipulation. They can be absorbed, reflected, dispersed, or countered by other energy fields. But a piece of metal traveling at 3,000 meters per second is just physics. It doesn't care about your defensive frequency, your field harmonics, or your quantum phase variance. It just wants to keep moving in a straight line until something stops it. The delegates began murmuring among themselves. But Elena wasn't finished. Human military doctrine is based on a simple principle: redundancy. We use energy weapons, certainly. We have plasma rifles, particle beam weapons, and quantum disruptors that rival anything in the galaxy. But we also maintain kinetic weapons because they work when everything else fails. Commander Zextar found his voice, though it carried less authority than before. But surely the limitations of kinetic weapons outweigh their benefits. Limited range, ammunition constraints, the need to account for gravity and atmospheric conditions. Elena's smile was patient but predatory. Range limitations? Commander, would you like to know the effective range of our ship-mounted kinetic weapons? Your ship weapons use the same technology? Ambassador Krillna's color shifted again. Enhanced versions, yes. Our Dreadnought-class vessels carry railguns that can fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Effective range is measured in astronomical units. A single tungsten rod fired from our latest battleships can penetrate any known shielding and deliver the kinetic equivalent of a nuclear weapon. The chamber erupted in urgent whispers. Species that had considered offering humanity protectorate status were rapidly recalculating the political implications of human military capabilities. Dr. Veloth pulled up holographic displays of known human vessels. These ships, we classified them as exploration craft with minimal armament. The energy signatures we detected suggested only basic defensive systems. Because you were looking for energy weapons, Elena explained. Our kinetic systems don't emit the electromagnetic signatures your sensors are designed to detect. A railgun at rest looks like a simple magnetic coil. You can't detect our weapons until we fire them. General Thakmore's clicking resumed, but at a much higher pitch. How many human vessels currently operate in this sector? Elena appeared to consider the question. I'm not authorized to discuss fleet deployment details, but I can tell you that every human ship, from exploration vessels to merchant craft, carries defensive armaments based on kinetic weapon principles. Commander Zextar was reviewing tactical displays on his personal interface. The merchant ships we've been escorting through pirate-controlled space. They're armed? Extensively, Elena confirmed. Human civilian vessels are required to maintain defensive capabilities sufficient to handle most common threats. Your pirates armed with energy weapons would find our merchant ships surprisingly difficult targets. Ambassador Krillna had shifted to a pale blue color that indicated deep thought among her species. Captain, this raises important questions about human integration into the galactic community. If your species possesses such advanced military capabilities, why did you present yourselves as a developing civilization seeking guidance? Elena's expression grew serious. Because we are a developing civilization seeking guidance. Military capability doesn't equal technological sophistication across all fields. We have much to learn about galactic medicine, faster than light communication, quantum computing, and dozens of other technologies where other species far exceed our capabilities. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. Humans have always excelled at warfare. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years and we've gotten very good at it. But we're not warlike by nature. We prefer trade, diplomacy, and cooperation. Our military capabilities exist to ensure we can protect ourselves while we pursue those peaceful goals. Dr. Veloth looked up from his analysis screens. Captain, These readings suggest that your ammunition contains materials that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions. How do you manufacture projectiles with multidimensional properties? Elena's smile returned. Human material science has focused heavily on creating substances that remain stable under extreme conditions. When you spend centuries shooting projectiles at very high velocities, you learn a lot about metallurgy and physics. Some of our ammunition contains materials that exist in quantum superposition states until impact, allowing them to interact with targets across multiple dimensional phases. The implications were staggering. The assembled delegates were beginning to realize that humanity hadn't just mastered kinetic weapons, they had pushed the technology into realms that other species hadn't even considered possible. Commander. Zextar set down his interface and looked directly at Elena. Captain, I must ask directly, how does human military capability compare to the major galactic powers? Elena considered her response carefully. The wrong words here could trigger diplomatic incidents or even military confrontations. I can only speak to our defensive capabilities, Commander. Humans have no interest in aggressive expansion or conquest. However, we are confident in our ability to defend our territories and our allies. That's not exactly an answer, General Thakmore observed. Elena's expression remained neutral. It's the only answer I'm authorized to give. The tension in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a blade. Commander Zextar exchanged meaningful glances with the other military representatives, while the civilian delegates began accessing their personal communication devices. Elena noticed the subtle shift in atmosphere and the way several hands moved closer to concealed weapons. Captain, Commander Zextar said slowly, I hope you understand that this demonstration has raised certain security concerns. Perhaps it would be prudent to discuss human military doctrine more thoroughly. Elena's hand remained relaxed at her side, nowhere near her weapon, but her posture subtly changed. Of course, Commander. I'm happy to answer any questions within the bounds of operational security. Dr. Veloth cleared his throat nervously. The materials analysis of your projectiles shows isotope ratios that don't match any known sources in this sector. Where does humanity acquire the resources for such advanced ammunition? We mine our own materials, Elena replied simply. Human space includes several systems rich in heavy elements. Our asteroid mining operations have been quite successful. General Thakmore's clicking intensified. Asteroid mining with weapons-grade output? That would require industrial infrastructure on a massive scale. Elena nodded. Humans are quite industrious. We've built extensive manufacturing capabilities to support our expansion into space. Ambassador Krillna's form flickered through several colors before settling on a deep red that indicated alarm. Captain, our intelligence estimates suggested that humanity controlled perhaps a dozen star systems with modest industrial development. Are those estimates incorrect? Elena appeared to consider how much information she should reveal. I'm not privy to your intelligence sources, Ambassador, but I can tell you that human expansion has proceeded rapidly over the past several decades. We've established colonies and industrial facilities throughout our local region of space. How many systems? Commander Zextar pressed. That's classified, Elena replied firmly. But I can tell you that humans have the industrial capacity to supply our military forces indefinitely. The delegates were rapidly accessing their databases, cross-referencing star charts and trade routes. Several species had established commerce agreements with humanity, based on the assumption that they were dealing with a small, technologically dependent civilization. The reality appeared to be very different. Dr. Veloth's instruments chimed softly as they completed their analysis. Captain, the energy signatures from your demonstration suggest that human weapons technology operates on principles we don't fully understand. Would you be willing to share technical specifications? Elena's smile was polite but firm. I'm afraid technical details of military systems are classified. However, human scientists would be happy to collaborate on non-military applications of our materials science research. Non-military applications? Ambassador Krillna asked. Certainly. The same technologies that allow us to create stable projectiles at high velocities have applications in construction, transportation, and manufacturing. We'd be happy to share innovations that could benefit everyone. General Thakmore leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Captain, I must ask about human military organization. How many personnel serve in your armed forces? Elena checked her chronometer again. I'm not authorized to discuss specific numbers, but I can tell you that human military doctrine emphasizes force multiplication through advanced technology rather than raw numbers. Meaning? Commander Zextar prompted. Meaning that our individual soldiers and ships are capable of engaging much larger enemy forces effectively. Quality over quantity, as we say. The implications were sobering. If human military technology was as advanced as the demonstration suggested, even a relatively small human force could pose a significant threat to much larger galactic militaries that relied on energy weapons and conventional defensive systems. Ambassador, Krillna shifted to a neutral amber color. Captain, perhaps we should discuss the terms of human integration into the galactic community in more detail. Given these revelations about your military capabilities, certain assumptions may need to be reconsidered. Elena nodded diplomatically. Humans remain committed to peaceful integration and mutually beneficial relationships with all galactic species. Our military capabilities exist solely for defensive purposes. But you understand our concern, Commander Zextar said. A previously unknown species with advanced military technology represents a potential threat that must be evaluated. Elena's expression hardened slightly. Commander, I would remind you that humanity was invited to join the galactic community. We came here seeking trade relationships and cultural exchange. We've been nothing but cooperative throughout the integration process. If you're now suggesting that our defensive capabilities somehow make us a threat, perhaps we should reconsider whether this community is as welcoming as we were led to believe. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates realized they were walking a diplomatic tightrope. Alienating humanity could have serious consequences if their military was as capable as Elena's demonstration suggested. Dr. Veloth attempted to diffuse the tension. Captain, no one is questioning human intentions. However, surely you can understand that we need to reassess security protocols given this new information about your capabilities. Elena relaxed slightly. Of course, humans appreciate the importance of security. We're prepared to provide reasonable assurances about our peaceful intentions. What sort of assurances? General Thakmor asked. Mutual defense agreements with species that seek our protection. Technology sharing for civilian applications. Perhaps joint training exercises to demonstrate human military doctrine and capabilities in a controlled environment. Ambassador Krillna's color shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. Joint exercises could indeed help build trust while allowing us to better understand human military methods. Commander Zextar was studying tactical displays again. Captain, hypothetically speaking, if humanity faced a military threat from a hostile galactic power, how would you respond? Elena's answer was immediate and unambiguous. We would defend ourselves with whatever force was necessary to ensure our survival and the safety of our allies. And if that threat came from one of the major galactic empires? General Thakmor asked quietly. Elena looked each delegate in the eye before responding. Commander, I hope that such a situation never arises. But if any empire decided to threaten human colonies or shipping, they would discover that humans are very difficult to intimidate. The message was clear. Humanity was not seeking conflict, but they were prepared for it. The delegates began to understand that their initial assessment of humanity as a minor species in need of protection was dangerously incorrect. Dr. Veloth's instruments detected elevated stress, indicators from several delegates. Perhaps we should adjourn for today and allow everyone time to process this information. Elena holstered her weapon completely and straightened her uniform. I think that's wise. Humans remain committed to building positive relationships with all species. But those relationships must be based on mutual respect and accurate understanding of each other's capabilities. Commander Zextar stood, his movements carefully controlled. Captain, this has been educational. I believe we all have communications to make with our respective governments. As the delegates began filing out of the chamber, Elena remained standing at attention. The demonstration had achieved its purpose, but she wondered if the galaxy was ready for the truth about humanity's place in the cosmic order. 3 days after the demonstration, emergency sessions were being held in capital cities across the galaxy. The Vorthan Empire's high command gathered in their war room, studying holographic displays of human ship movements and industrial signatures. What they discovered sent shockwaves through their military intelligence apparatus. General Krathovar slammed his fist against the tactical display, causing the hologram to flicker. 47 systems. Our scouts have confirmed active human presence in 47 systems, not the 12 we estimated. How did our intelligence networks miss an expansion of this magnitude? Admiral Zorthek's scales rippled with agitation. Because they weren't hiding it, we simply weren't looking properly. Human expansion followed patterns we didn't recognize. They established mining operations and manufacturing facilities before setting up permanent colonies. By the time we detected their civilian populations, their industrial infrastructure was already mature. The implications were staggering. If humanity had been expanding for decades while maintaining the appearance of a minor civilization, their actual capabilities could be far beyond what even Captain Vasquez had revealed. Meanwhile, in the crystal cities of the consortium, Ambassador Krillna stood before the Council of Resonance, her form cycling through colors of deep concern. The energy matrices that the human projectile destroyed were manufactured using our most advanced harmonic techniques. They should have been impervious to kinetic impact at any velocity. Counselor Threndal's crystalline structure pulsed with analytical light patterns. Show us the recordings again. The holographic replay showed Elena's first shot destroying the energy matrix in exquisite detail. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed that the projectile hadn't simply overpowered the matrix's absorption capacity, it had somehow disrupted the fundamental harmonic frequencies that held the crystal structure together. This suggests understanding of resonance physics, far beyond what we credited them with, Counselor Velandra observed. They didn't merely overcome our defenses through brute force. They understood exactly how our technology worked and engineered their ammunition specifically to counter it. The realization was troubling. If humans possess such detailed knowledge of consortium technology, what else did they know about galactic defensive systems? In the biomechanical hives of the Nixari Coalition, General Thakmor connected directly to the collective consciousness to share his concerns. With the Swarm Lords, the mental link buzzed with agitation as thousands of warrior minds processed the implications of human military capability. The adaptive biomechanical target was destroyed before defensive protocols could engage, Thakmor reported through the neural link. Analysis suggests the projectile's impact velocity exceeded our adaptive response threshold by a factor of 12. The Swarm Lord Prime Mother's consciousness touched his mind directly. 12 times faster than our adaptive systems can respond? That should not be possible with primitive kinetic weapons. The human technology is not primitive, Thakmor corrected. It's sophisticated beyond our previous understanding. They've weaponized physics in ways we haven't considered. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. Species that had considered humanity a minor player in galactic affairs were rapidly reassessing their strategic positions. Trade agreements were being reviewed, military deployment patterns were being analyzed, and diplomatic protocols were being rewritten. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel Determination, reading reports from Earth Command. The political responses to her demonstration had been swift and predictable. Some species were expressing interest in closer military cooperation, while others were quietly mobilizing their fleets in defensive postures. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message, marked with the highest priority encryption. Admiral Sarachen's image appeared on the screen, her expression serious. Elena, the demonstration went exactly as planned. How are the delegates responding? Elena leaned back in her chair. Mixed reactions, Admiral. Some species are interested in mutual defense agreements. Others are treating us as a potential threat. The Vorthon Empire has been making discreet inquiries about our fleet strength and deployment patterns. Admiral Chen nodded. Intelligence predicted that response. We're prepared for either cooperation or confrontation. What's your assessment of their actual military capabilities compared to ours? Elena considered her answer carefully. Based on my observations and analysis of their weapons demonstrations, I believe our technological advantages are more significant than we initially estimated. Their energy weapons are impressive, but they're designed to counter each other's technologies. They're not optimized to defend against our approach. And if they attempt to retrofit their defenses, it would take them years to develop effective countermeasures, assuming they could even understand the principles involved. Our materials science and physics research are centuries ahead of theirs in specific areas. Admiral Chen's expression relaxed slightly. Good. The Joint Chiefs were concerned about potential military escalation. What about their numbers? Elena pulled up tactical data on her personal screen. Individual species have substantial military forces, but they're not coordinated. The galactic community operates more like a loose alliance than a unified military force. If we face conflict, it's likely to be with individual empires rather than a coordinated galactic response. Unless we give them reason to unite against us, Admiral Chen observed. Exactly. That's why the diplomatic approach remains crucial. We need to establish ourselves as valuable allies rather than existential threats. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Elena's door. "Enter," she called. Commander Marcus Webb, the ship's intelligence officer, stepped into the quarters with a datapad in his hand. "Captain, we're receiving multiple communications requests from various galactic governments. They're all marked as urgent diplomatic priority." Elena gestured for him to continue. "The Crystalline Consortium is requesting detailed technical briefings on human materials science. The Nexari Coalition wants to discuss joint military exercises. The Vorthan Empire is proposing a formal military alliance with technology-sharing provisions." Admiral Chen leaned forward on the screen. "And the smaller species?" Commander Webb consulted his datapad. 15 minor civilizations have requested human protection services for their shipping lanes. Apparently, their existing security arrangements with the major empires aren't as effective as they'd like. Elena and Admiral Chen exchanged glances. The political landscape was shifting exactly as Earth Command had predicted. Humanity's demonstration of military capability was creating opportunities for alliance building, while simultaneously causing concern among the established powers. "There's something else," Commander Webb added. "Long-range sensors have detected increased military activity in several sectors. The major empires appear to be repositioning their fleets." Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. "Defensive positioning or preparation for offensive action?" "Unclear at this time, Admiral, but the movement patterns suggest they're preparing for multiple contingencies." Elena stood and moved to her cabin's viewport, looking out at the stars. "Admiral, I recommend we accelerate our diplomatic timeline. The longer we wait to formalize relationships, the more time the major powers have to coordinate their response to our presence." "Agreed. Elena, I'm authorizing you to begin formal alliance negotiations with any species that approach us in good faith, but maintain our defensive posture. If anyone decides to test human resolve, they need to understand the consequences." As Admiral Chen's image disappeared from the screen, Elena turned to Commander Webb. "Marcus, prepare responses to all legitimate diplomatic inquiries. Let them know we're willing to discuss mutual cooperation and defense agreements. And send a message to all human vessels in this sector. Maintain yellow alert status until further notice." "Yes, Captain." "What about the request for technical briefings?" Elena smiled grimly. "Schedule them. It's time the galaxy learned exactly what humans are capable of." 6 months after Elena's demonstration, the galactic political landscape had transformed completely. The Human Colonial Defense Force had signed mutual protection agreements with 23 minor civilizations, established joint research programs with the Crystalline Consortium, and entered into limited technology sharing arrangements with the Nexari Coalition. The Vorthan Empire, however, had chosen a different path. Commander Zextar stood on the bridge of the Vorthan Dreadnought Conquest, watching as his fleet assembled in the Kepler 442 system. 300 warships, the largest military force the Empire had deployed in over a century, hung in formation around the massive command vessel. Their target, the human colony world of New Geneva, a seemingly vulnerable settlement on the edge of human space. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors confirm the human presence on the planet's surface. Estimated population, 2 million civilians. Defensive installations appear minimal." Admiral Vex Thran, the Empire's most decorated military commander, studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Excellent. A swift demonstration of Imperial power should convince the humans to accept protectorate status before this situation escalates further." The Empire's strategy was simple: capture a human colony world, demonstrate their overwhelming numerical superiority, and force humanity to accept subordinate status within the galactic hierarchy. Intelligence reports suggested that human space forces were spread thin across their 47 systems, making it unlikely they could respond quickly to a surprise attack. What the Vorthon intelligence network had failed to detect was the revolution in human military technology that had occurred since Elena's demonstration. Earth Command had not been idle during the diplomatic negotiations. Captain Elena Vasquez, now promoted to Commodore, stood in the command center of the human battle station Thermopylae, hidden in the asteroid belt of the Kepler 442 system. The station represented the pinnacle of human military engineering, a mobile fortress capable of engaging entire fleets while remaining virtually undetectable. Commodore, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the sensor station. Vorthon fleet composition confirmed. 300 vessels, including 12 Dreadnought-class ships. They're moving into attack formation around New Geneva. Elena studied the tactical display, noting the Empire's deployment patterns. Classic intimidation formation. They're planning to overwhelm the colony's defenses quickly and force a surrender. Should we warn New Geneva? Asked Captain James Morrison, the station's commanding officer. Elena shook her head. The colonists are already in the underground shelters. This was always a possibility we prepared for. She activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Commodore Vasquez. Operation Anvil is authorized. Repeat, Operation Anvil is authorized. Across the system, human vessels that had been hiding in asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and behind planetary bodies began powering up their systems. The Vorthon Empire was about to discover that humanity's military capabilities extended far beyond advanced ammunition. Emerald Vex Thran received the first reports of human ships, appearing on sensors with confusion. 12 contacts? That's their entire defensive force. This will be over in minutes. Admiral, his sensor operator called urgently. Additional contacts appearing. Make that 37 human vessels. The Admiral's confusion turned to mild concern. 37 ships against 300 was still hopeless odds, but it suggested the humans were willing to sacrifice their entire fleet rather than surrender the colony. Sir? The sensor operator's voice cracked slightly. More contacts. 74 human ships now detected. Admiral Vex Thran moved to the sensor station personally. The display showed human vessels continuing to decloak throughout the system. Ships were emerging from locations that should have been impossible to hide in, using stealth technology that made them invisible to Vorthon sensors until they chose to reveal themselves. Final count, the sensor operator whispered. 143 human vessels. The bridge fell silent. The humans hadn't assembled a desperate last-stand force. They had laid a trap. The Vorthon fleet was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and surrounded. Elena's voice echoed across all frequencies as she broadcast on open channels. Admiral Vex Thran, this is Commodore Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have entered human space with hostile intent and threaten our civilian population. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your forces beyond the system perimeter, or we will consider your fleet an active threat to human security. Admiral Vex Thran activated his own communication system. Human Commander, you are outgunned. Our dreadnoughts alone outmass your entire fleet. Stand down and accept Imperial protection, and no harm will come to your colony. Elena's response was immediate. Admiral, I'm going to give you a demonstration of why your threat assessment is incorrect. Please observe. The space around New Geneva suddenly erupted with weapons fire, but not from the human fleet. The planet itself had revealed hidden defensive installations that had been camouflaged as mining operations and agricultural facilities. Massive railgun emplacements emerged from underground bunkers, while orbital defense platforms decloaked around the planet's moon. The first Vorthon ship to test the planetary defenses simply vanished. The destroyer Talon approached the planet's atmosphere and was struck by a projectile, moving at nearly 15% of light speed. The ship's shields, armor, and hull were vaporized instantly, leaving only expanding plasma where a warship had been. Impossible, Admiral Vex Thran breathed. No kinetic weapon can achieve those velocities. Elena's voice remained calm and professional. Human military engineering has advanced significantly since our first diplomatic contact, Admiral. Our planetary defense systems use magnetic acceleration technology that can propel projectiles to relativistic speeds. At those velocities, your shields and armor become irrelevant. The tactical implications were staggering. If human colonies possessed such defensive capabilities, invading them would be suicidal. But the demonstration wasn't over. Additionally, Elena continued, You should be aware that every human vessel in this system is equipped with our latest weapons technology. Would you like another demonstration? Before Admiral Vexthran could respond, one of the human frigates fired a single shot at a Vorthan cruiser. The projectile appeared to be a standard kinetic round, but when it struck the cruiser's shield, something extraordinary happened. The ship's entire defensive grid overloaded and failed, leaving it completely vulnerable. That was a quantum disruption round, Elena explained. It's designed to create cascade failures in energy-based defensive systems. Your shields won't protect you from our weapons, Admiral. The Vorthan fleet was trapped in a tactical nightmare. They were outnumbered, their defenses were ineffective against human weapons, and they were surrounded by an enemy that had clearly been preparing for this confrontation. Admiral Vexthran found his voice. What are your terms, Commodore? Elena's response was swift and non-negotiable. Immediate withdrawal from human space. Formal apology to the colonial government. Reparations for the attempted invasion. And a binding agreement that the Vorthan Empire will respect human sovereignty. And if we refuse? Elena's voice carried a note of cold finality. Then we will demonstrate why humanity survived thousands of years of warfare on our homeworld, Admiral. We didn't reach the stars by being peaceful. We reached them by being too dangerous to stop. The silence on the Vorthan communication channel stretched for nearly a minute before Admiral Vexthran responded. Terms accepted, Commodore. We are withdrawing immediately. As the Vorthan fleet began its retreat, Elena turned to Captain Morrison. Send a message to Earth Command and all human colonies. The galaxy now understands our position. We're not seeking conquest, but we will defend ourselves. Anyone who threatens human civilians will discover that our old weapon, human determination backed by superior technology, fires harder than they ever imagined. The Kepler 442 incident became known throughout the galaxy as the moment when humanity announced its true place in the cosmic order. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive had revealed themselves to be the most formidable military power the galaxy had ever encountered. Elena looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity's path among them was now secure. They had proven that sometimes the oldest weapons, courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect what matters, were still the most effective tools in the universe.